Hey everyone, David Aragona here with another edition of the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series. This weekend, I'm taking a look at the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby on Saturday at Oaklawn Park. Race 12 on their 13-race program, 100 Derby qualifying points on the line to the winner of this race, and that basically guarantees a spot in the Kentucky Derby starting gate. Before we take a look at the field for this Arkansas Derby, though, I want to remind you that you should access the currently free version of TimeformUS on DRF.com. This is the new redesigned TimeformUS that you can access right now if you have a Classic or Formulator PP subscription. Just click on that TimeformUS tab and check out the new version of the PPs for free, because this free trial does end this week. So make sure to check that out when you're handicapping the Arkansas Derby this weekend. Let's throw up the field of 11 runners signed on for this race, and it's a pretty competitive group. Number 8, Reincarnate, is the slight morning line favorite at 5-2. He's one that I know a lot of people liked or had interested coming out of that Rebel Stakes, where he did have a difficult trip. So he is one that is likely to take some money in this spot, as is the Rebel runner-up, the number 10, Red Route 1, who actually finished ahead of him last time. That horse going out for the Steve Asmussen barn, but there are plenty of other horses in this race from powerful stables. The number 6, Angel of Empire, coming off a Risen Star victory for Brad Cox. Rocket Can, the Holy Bull winner for Bill Mott. So a lot going on and much to talk about in this Arkansas Derby. Before we get to the individual contenders, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector. And you can see that fast pace flag is showing up for this race, but I do want to talk about this a little bit, because there are 2 horses in this race that you would really view as likely front runners, those being the number 3, Harlow Cap, and the number 4, Two Eagles River. The number 8, Reincarnate, is one that some people might put in that category as well, but he really didn't have any early speed last time in the Rebel, so I'm not sure that I should expect him to get back to the front-running tactics that he showed earlier in his career. And given that these are the only 3 that look to be going forward, and Reincarnate may or may not even be among that group, I'm not sure that I really view this as a race that is going to totally fall apart. So I don't want to view those front-runners negatively just based on that fast pace flag showing up. You do see the late pace rating flag attached to the number 10, Red Route 1. No surprise there. He is a late runner who is finishing best of all in his races, but we'll see how much ground he has left to make up in at the end. Let's also check out the TimeformUS Finish Projector, one of the new features in the TimeformUS redesign that just launched. And the number 8, Reincarnate, that morning line favorite, he is shown as the winner of this race, but pretty close on the TimeformUS algorithm. The 8, 7, and 10, Rocket Can and Red Route 1, along with Reincarnate, all shown pretty close together at the wire. So this is a pretty contentious race, and one where the algorithm had trouble separating them, and I know that I did when I handicapped this race. So let's start to go through some of these contenders, and we'll begin with the discussion of that Rebel Stakes. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that when Red Route 1 did get up for second and Reincarnate was third. Red Route 1 dropped so far out in the early portion of this race that he's going to basically make an unencumbered outside run to get up for that play spot. Do note the trouble that Reincarnate gets in right there as he actually gets sandwiched between horses, and actually Bourbon Bash, who came out into his path and was the one that interfered with him, he's also back in this race. But I liked the way that Reincarnate recovered from that trouble, came on between horses to get up for third. Arguably, he was finishing best of all, better than even Red Route 1 at the end of that race. So it was an encouraging performance that he was able to show that versatility, to come from off the pace, from that far back in the pack for the first time in his career, and run through between horses, overcoming trouble to get up for third. The reservation that I have with Reincarnate, though, is that it's not like he had trouble at the start of the Rebel. He was just really sluggish and slow out of the gate, something that we hadn't seen from him in his prior starts in the Bob Baffert stable. He's a horse that actually broke sharply and set a fast pace in his prior victory in the Sham Stakes at Santa Anita. So it was like a different version of Reincarnate that we saw in the slop in the Rebel last time. Now, was it the sloppy track that he just wasn't handling at the start of that race? Was he just not as sharp for Trader Tignac Teen? Those are questions that I think we have to answer on Saturday in this Arkansas Derby, and I'm not sure how short a price I want to take on a horse that does have a lot of buzz around him off that pretty obvious trouble trip last time out. The other horse coming out of the Rebel is the number 10, Red Route 1. And as I said, he was the one that was making that big move from the back of the pack at the quarter pole that day. You could see in the TimeformUS past performances, he was nearly 20 lengths behind the leaders moving down the backstretch. But those red color-coded pace figures indicate that this was a race that came apart towards the end. So it definitely played to his running style. That 112 TimeformUS speed figure is the best that he's done so far. And he's definitely been improving in that department since he's turned 3 years old. He seems like one that's not going to mind the stretch out to the 1.125 distance at all. But if the pace is not quite as hot as it was last time, I wonder if he's going to get as favorable of a trip. And he is a horse that has achieved those 2 best speed figures over sloppy tracks in his last 2 starts. So we'll have to see if he can be as effective with the blinkers going on Saturday over a fast track for trainer Steve Asmussen. The one other horse coming out of that Rebel is the number 1, Bourbon Bash, and he's the one who caused those problems for Reincarnate in mid-stretch. I thought, all things considered, though, for a 77-1 shot, Bourbon Bash ran pretty well. He was traveling sweetly around the far turn in behind horses, tried to get out from behind those tiring runners at the top of the stretch, and that's when he caused those problems for Reincarnate. It's never like he completely threw in the towel, though he wasn't finishing with the same energy as those 2 others coming out of the race. That said, he's 15-1 on the morning line. I could see him actually floating up off that price, and he's going out for a barn, Dwayne Lucas, who is having a bit of a renaissance at this Oaklawn Park meet. A lot of his horses are running well, better than they have in prior seasons, so maybe Bourbon Bash is a horse that you can make a little bit of a case for at a very big price. Let's move on to some horses coming out of different races. The number 7, Rocket Can, recently finished second in the Fountain of Youth. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race, and he was no match for the easy winner this day, Forte, the undisputed leader of this 3-year-old division right now. But I did think that Rocket Can showed some grit to stay on for second this day. It was helpful to him that he was never really on the rail, because I do think that the inside path was not where you wanted to be on Fountain of Youth Saturday at Gulfstream Park, and he was 3 to 4 wide in the early stages, did go down to the 2 path in the final half mile of that race, and he ran a decent race to be second, getting that 1:15 TimeformUS speed figure. That's actually the biggest number that anybody in this field has earned, so that's a feather in his cap that he has that advantage over this field, and there are no Fortes in this race, so some might argue it's a little bit of class relief, even though this probably is a deeper field, though it doesn't have that kind of standout. I'm of 2 minds about Rocket Can. He proved that his victory in the Holy Bull was no fluke. He is just a horse that's moving forward at the right time, but I thought he had so much go in his favor last time, and stretching out to the 1.125 distance, we'll see if that really works for him. I just would need to get a price on him if I was going to back Rocket Can in this race. Another horse that's coming off a good effort is the number 6, Angel of Empire, and actually 2 horses in this field are exiting the Risen Star Stakes, and I want to talk about both of them. Angel of Empire was the winner of that race, getting what was for him a career best 1:10 TimeformUS speed figure. He was going the 1.125 distance that day and handled it very well, so you know that the stamina is not going to be a problem for him. He just strikes me as a very progressive sort. He had run some lower speed figures when he was a 2-year-old, but had showed some promise in those races at Horseshoe Indianapolis, ran a sneaky good race in that Smarty Jones 2-back when he lost to a stablemate Victory Formation. He was really finishing at the end that day and actually galloped out very strongly past the winner after the wire, suggesting that he was a horse that was going to appreciate more ground when he got it. And that was the case in the Risen Star. Now, when I initially watched that race, I kind of came away with the impression that Angel of Empire was a very lucky winner, because you see that red color-coded pace figure for the half mile, and he was coming from off the pace. But it's not like he was that far back in the early stages. There's this narrative out there that Two Phils might have run the best race in the Risen Star because he made what was considered an early move into that fast pace. But it's not like Angel of Empire was ever more than a length or a length and a half behind Two Phils in the early stages of that race when you watch the entirety of the Risen Star. And I was checking out the head-on replay, which is kind of hard to see. I mean, the entire race was run in darkness, so we're not showing the replay. It's a difficult race to really take anything away from, but I did get a better view of the far turn watching the head-on, and there was a brief moment where Angel of Empire was following the wrong horse, actually one that was tiring back in his face, and he lost momentum when he was trying to move in tandem with Two Phils. That one got away from him, and I liked that Angel of Empire was able to regain the momentum at the quarter pole to run past that rival and on to victory, and he was finishing pretty strongly at the end of that race. So I'm not going to discount that Angel of Empire could perhaps take another step forward, and he feels like the one of the main players that is coming into this race without a lot of buzz around him, even though he's trained by Brad Cox. So I think there is a case to be made for Angel of Empire. The other horse coming out of the Risen Star is the number 3 Harlow Cap, and the excuse to make for him is obviously the pace, because he was pressing the early leader. The other runners that were involved in that pace just completely fell apart at the end, and he did too. I mean, he was fading back to 6th in the stretch of that race, but others were basically eased after being involved in that pace, including the early leader determinedly. So Harlow Cap stayed on better than they did to fade to 6th that day. I do have some questions about how far he wants to go. The mile and an eighth attempt was the first of his career last time out, and he didn't quite get it given that stiff pace situation. From pedigree standpoint, he's supposed to love distance, being by Justify out of a dam that's by Bodemeister and is a three-quarter brother to Pioneer of the Nile, who was second in the Kentucky Derby. But Harlow Cap still has to prove it on the racetrack. I do think the trip could work out, and I believe he's got a step forward in him. I wonder if we're going to get that 15-1 morning line. It feels like he's going to take more support than that, but he is one that I would consider in this race. Another horse that should show speed is the number 4, Two Eagles River. Let's take a look at his last race when he was an easy winner of an optional claiming event at Oaklawn. Now, this was just going a mile, and he also got a very favorable pace setup as he was left alone on the front end and just got to lope along through some moderate fractions. The thing that you will note about him, which is positive, is that the horse who was second to him, Disarm, did come back last weekend and improve to finish second in the Louisiana Derby and actually secure a spot in the Kentucky Derby starting gate. Two Eagles River beat that rival by 4 lengths, but I think he caught Disarm on the right day on that occasion. He had much more recent experience coming into that race than Disarm did, had the pace advantage. So I'm a little skeptical that Two Eagles River is going to be able to stretch out to the mile and an eighth and deal with the other speed, Harlow Cap, in this race. And he's one that feels like he could take some money as well. So I was not really on his bandwagon. One horse to take a look at that's also coming off an optional claiming victory is the number 5, Airtime. We'll check out his most recent victory when he came up the inside, squeezing through to win this race, going the mile and a 16th distance at Oaklawn, beating Shopper's Revenge, that gray, who was the favorite, closing down the outside. Airtime had run very well to win a starter allowance race by 10 lengths in his prior start, was making his first start off the claim for Robertino Diodoro here, and proved that big improvement two-back was no fluke as it was able to get the job done over that Steve Asmussen-trained rival. What I don't like is that the runner-up Shopper's Revenge came back to run, I believe, 5th without a major excuse in the Risen Star, or I should say the Louisiana Derby last weekend, so that form line for Airtime didn't hold up as well as you might have hoped it could have. And also, he just has to get faster from a speed figure standpoint. So I had some questions about him, though he does feel like one that could be a big price in this race if you'd like him. So let's throw out my picks for this Arkansas Derby. And I landed on a horse that I sort of wasn't expecting to land on when I handicapped this race, but just gauging the horses that are likely to take money in here, I think Angel of Empire is the one that is flying under the radar the most. Even though he's got those strong connections in his corner, Brad Cox and Flavian Pratt, I just see a lot of people underrating him off that Risen Star victory, even though he ran very well to win that race. He handles the distance, and I think the pace situation will be at least fair enough for a horse that is not some deep closer like Red Route 1 is. He can get a mid-pack trip. So Angel of Empire, I think, will be a fair price, and he is my top pick in this race. I obviously have respect for Reincarnate, who probably will go favored. And the other big price I would like to use is the number 3 Harlow Cap, who will be trying to wire the field on the front end. But it's the number 6 Angel of Empire for me in the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby on Saturday at Oaklawn Park. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.